Carlos Saisu live from Las Vegas, the scene of Super Bowl 58 between the Chiefs and the Niners for ESPN Los Angeles. And we are proud to have, as always, Dr. Alan Beyer of the Hoag Orthopedic Institute. Dr. Beyer, how are you doing for Super Week?
Doing real well, not quite in Sin City like you are, which is going to be absolutely bonkers. I used to go to Vegas every year for Super Bowl just to be there, to be at the sports books and be able to play a couple of props. But now with the game being there for the first time, I mean, this is just absolutely crazy. I think that you're not going to be able to find a craps table under $200 there on Saturday and Sunday. So I hope you're having a good time in Sin City.
Just taking a little walk by the craps tables, by the roulettes tables. Those minimums were looking a little different from the last time I was here. So definitely Vegas is ready for the Super Bowl.
Oh, I know that they've had a couple of years to get used to the Raiders, so that got them used to NFL football. I mean, prior to that, all they ever had was UNLV, and I remember their heydays. This is good old Colin Kaepernick. But I think that they're ready for the NFL, and next is going to be baseball if things go according to plan. That's where the Athletics are planning to go, so we'll see. But I think that. I just hope that nothing crazy happens there. Crazy things seem to happen around Super Bowl cities, and Vegas is the craziest of Super Bowl cities. So I just hope that everybody's safe and nobody does anything too stupid, and the game goes off without a hitch. I mean,
Hey,
Taylor Swift found a parking spot for her jet, so that's good, right? And we'll see what happens.
and what you were talking about earlier, Dr. Beyer, we are recording this episode on Wednesday of Super Week. So we got a few more days to go. But so far, only one arrest. And of course, no surprise, it would be a Las Vegas Raider to get in trouble and not anybody who's actually going to be taking the field on Sunday.
Well, that's always good because that has happened in the past. I do remember a few of those incidents, or any of the broadcast crews of from the various networks. I remember those incidents. So the LV Police Department is ready. They're more than able. They're used to this kind of brouhaha. So I think that they're in good hands in terms of that. Let's just hope everybody just behaves themselves and has a good time.
You talked about the LVPD being able. Looks like for this Super Bowl, Super Bowl 58 is going to have a lot of players able to play on the field at Allegiant Stadium. Only one real injury standing out, the uncertainty around All-Pro guard Joe Thuney, pectoral injury. He missed last game, the conference championship against the Ravens, and Andy Reid coming out and saying that he has a slim chance of playing. It seems like the Chiefs didn't really miss him out last game. He was replaced by Nick Allegretti and did well, kept Mahomes on his feet and by protecting him. But Dr. Beyer, torn pectoral. Do you think recovery time, could he get into shape by Super Bowl Sunday?
I think for the position that he plays, that's actually quite a devastating injury because it's the kind of position where you're playing with your arms up most of the time, obviously blocking, trying to protect your quarterback. Clearly, it wasn't a surgical lesion because he didn't have surgery and it only occurred a few weeks ago. I'd say if Andy Reid says slim, I think that's as close as you're going to get Andy Reid to say none. I don't think we'll be seeing him in the game. That's a really tough injury for a lineman to overcome after it's only been a few weeks.
Since we have such a short injury report, I want to bring up something that was in the news that could be maybe some factor that we see, especially early on in the game. It was very interesting that the Chiefs are practicing at the Raiders facilities indoor while the Niners are practicing outdoors. And as you've seen, Dr. Beyer, in Southern California, and I've even seen here out in Vegas, the weather hasn't been all that great. So not ideal conditions to practice in for the Niners.
Well, first of all, I don't know how they chose where each team was going to practice, but I think the Kansas City Chiefs won the coin toss on that one. First of all, they're practicing indoors. The game is going to be indoors. So that's much easier to simulate game conditions. But more important than that, even, you're hearing scuttlebutt out there that the field at UNLV is not in kind of NFL shape where the 49ers are practicing. It's a lot softer than the typical NFL field, which the measurements are usually in the 70s in terms of hardness. These are supposed to be in the 50s, even though the NFL claims that they laid down a whole new layer of sod just a week ago to try to bring the field up to NFL standards. Laying down new sod is something that the NFL seems to have some problems with. Because I remember last year at the Super Bowl, which was in Arizona, at the Glendale Stadium, that they laid down a whole new field of grass that supposedly the USGA, the United States Golf Association, had consulted with them on. That was a hybrid that was supposed to be perfect in terms of its texture and its durability. And both teams complained like crazy about the field last year, that it was ripping up very easily. They couldn't get appropriate traction at all times. I think the NFL is not spending enough time doing the research, and maybe not waiting till the week before to get a field practice ready, because clearly Kansas City gets a little bit of a nod in terms of being kind of lucky that they got to practice where they're practicing.
You mentioned lucky. Vegas has the Niners favored by, at this point, 1.5 points, depending on which book you go to. Maybe this is the NFL's way of leveling out the playing field literally.
I'm actually quite surprised that it was actually up to almost three at one point, for the 49ers. I really think if there was ever a pick'em game on a neutral site, this is a pick'em game. I just can't understand. I think they must have given a little bit more weight to how the San Francisco 49ers did during the regular season in terms of how many points they scored and how they beat up on most of their opponents, except for that Baltimore game, which we'll try to forget. Um, I think that Kansas City, though, the last few weeks has just really kind of woken up and handled three tough opponents, two of them on the road, and done a more than credible job. So I would have seen this as if I was the book, I would have made this game pick 'em. I just say it's awful hard to ever bet against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Patrick Mahomes against Mr. Irrelevant from 2 years ago, really? And you're making Mr. Irrelevant the favorite? I don't know. Christian McCaffrey is probably the reason why they're giving him a little bit of a nod, but I think this is as close to a pick'em game as any that I can remember in recent history.
I wish all of our fans, and I wish you, Dr. Beyer, could be watching the game out here in Vegas. But, Doc, share your plans. How are you enjoying the game?
So I decided a long time ago. After spending a year with Dr. Curlin and Dr. Joe back in the 80s, in that one year, I think I went to 250 live sporting events in 365 days, between football, baseball, hockey, basketball, everything. And you get a little bit sported out in terms of live events, especially with the quality of TVs today, with a nice big OLED TV and a refrigerator right there, a nice clean restroom right there, a wine cellar not too far away. I mean, hello, you can't give me any stadium, including Jerry Jones's stadium, which I still think is the best stadium in the United States. Um, it doesn't compare. So I actually, because when I'm at Jerry Jones Stadium, I watch the game on the stupid screen instead of looking down at the field. So what the heck am I doing there? I can watch on a screen in the comfort of a couch. I really don't go to big games like this live anymore. I enjoy them more at home. There are certain sporting events that I still think live are unbelievable. Certain golf events, the Masters, unbelievable to see that live. The Ryder Cup, unbelievable to see that live. But other things like I wouldn't go to the NCAA Final Four anymore. Same reasons, same wine cellar, same clean restroom, same refrigerator. Maybe I'm just getting old. I enjoy the
Doc,
creature comforts of home.
a lot of fans have argued that you mentioned the NCAA Final Four, the championship game, of course, here the Super Bowl. It's turned so corporate. It's not made for fans anymore. And it's hard to afford, not to mention the inconvenience of paying for a ticket, finding a ticket, paying for parking, dealing with the crowds, coming to Vegas just to stay in $1,000 room just to go to the game. And all those you could easily replace, like Doc, as you mentioned, being in the comfort of your home with your feet up on your own couch, watching on your own TV, and enjoying the perfect Super Bowl snack. Which for you, Doc, what would it be?
Wow, that's an awful hard question. I think that you have to pace yourself. And Super Bowl is like Thanksgiving on steroids because you've got 4 hours to pace yourself in terms of what you're eating. And you've got to pay attention. It's not halftime, let's take off and go sit down at the table and eat, because halftime, I think this year's going to be a fabulous halftime show with Usher. And I've always been one of those fanatics with Super Bowl commercials. They went through a couple of years where they got a little bit too, politically correct, and they didn't want to offend anybody, and they were kind of all vanilla. I think we're kind of over that because I've seen a few of the commercials for this year already, and I think we're getting back to some pretty good comedy writing, and people are taking a couple of chances again and putting it out there. So I love the commercials in the Super Bowl. I love halftime in the Super Bowl. So it's basically 4 hours that you have to pace yourself for. What's the right thing to do? You got to go with just a bunch of finger foods. I mean, the typical wings, sliders, things that you just stick in your mouth, and it takes only a minute to finish it, so you can go back to watching the game. Um, this is also one day of the year where I hope my internist isn't listening to this broadcast that we're doing here. This is one day of the year that I don't really care about how much I'm taking in, what its caloric content is, what its fat content is, or anything else. I'm just there to
Doc,
have
this
a
is
good
this is
time.
where I stop recording, right?
Huh? This is
This is
just
this is where I stop.
this is just go there to have a good time. That's another good argument for watching the game at home because stadium food just doesn't compare to what you could do with your friends at home.
So, Dr. Alan Beyer of the Hoag Orthopedic Institute. Final question of the NFL season. Doc, your prediction for Super Bowl 58.
Well, anybody who's been listening to me, both here and on my radio show, knows that I find it very, very hard to ever bet against Patrick Mahomes and add Andy Reid. The thing that's really interested me a little bit, Eric Bieniemy used to be with the Chiefs until this year when he made that lateral move to Washington to be the offensive coordinator there. Um, he left. The Chiefs are still in the Super Bowl with Andy Reid and with Patrick Mahomes. Eric Bieniemy led the team that had maybe amongst the worst offenses of any team in the NFL. Now that's not his fault, but clearly Eric Bieniemy wasn't the secret sauce that made Kansas City so great in previous years. Um, I just can't. I can't go against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and a defensive coordinator who just came up with the game plan of a lifetime against the Ravens. So put that all together. I'm leaning towards the Chiefs.
Yeah, Steve Spagnuolo has done a great job, an incredible job this season. Well, Dr. Beyer, here we go. Let's wrap up the NFL season. Happy Super Bowling this Sunday.
And back at you, and I hope you have an absolutely great time and just you're there, just enjoy yourself and seize the moment.